What's up, Dream Builder? I hope that you're getting a lot of value from this episode. Note takers are money makers. So I hope that you're taking lots of notes, and I hope that you'll implement something that will help to change your real estate career. If you want even more access, even more resources, and you want a community to help keep you accountable, well, I want to invite you to head on over to DreamNationAcademy.com. Again, that's DreamNationAcademy.com. That's where I hang out as well as the team, and we host. What's up, Dream Nation? We are back again with another episode from the real estate side of things. And I'm excited because today I have the man on, Mr. Damon Woodward. Damon, you want to go ahead and say what's up to Dream Nation?
What's up? What's up? What's up? Happy to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah,
man, it's a pleasure to have you. Talk to me about, for you, a lot of people, when they see you, they've seen one of the biggest inspirations when it comes to real estate investing. And I'm sure that's how you got in. And for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about Mr. Stefan Arnio. Mm-hmm. And so you've had the pleasure of being mentored by him and helping him to create a powerhouse of a company. But if we could take it back to when you were just a young boy, tell us, who is Damon Woodward?
Yeah, so I had a pretty humble beginning. I was born in a pretty small town way up northern Canada. Very small family. I have a twin brother and I have a single mom. So we didn't have a whole pile of people in the family. It was very tight. We have very close relationships. So same thing, humble beginnings for the most part. We didn't really have a whole lot of extra. We had, enough to get by. We were never really lacking anything. When you're that age, when you're a kid, you could have macaroni and cheese one day with ketchup. You could have macaroni and cheese one day with wieners or something. It's still all good. Like, it still tastes good. We weren't really lacking anything. Normal stuff. What we usually do at that age is we would just bike around all day. Like, it was, like living the best life just as a kid. Our main, I guess, the little delights we had once in a while would be like treats, candy. We didn't really get it all that often. So whenever we did get it, it was always a bit of a treat. So one of the things that kind of got me into entrepreneurship, if I'm just looking back now, we would ride our bikes all day up and down the street in front of our house. There was the convenience store there. And we were always thinking, man, that place, it has all the candy. That was the currency when you're like 7 years old. It's got all the candy. It also has all the videos, like blockbuster videos. That was like the highlight, is you have some treats, watch a movie. So we were thinking, okay, like, how can we get into that space and how can we, get some money to buy some of the stuff? So what we ended up doing is we started just raking leaves on people's lawns. It sounds kind of cliche. A lot of entrepreneurs start with raking and shoveling and just all the small stuff. So we started raking lawns. What ended up happening is, when you're that age, you don't really need that much money. It wasn't really about the money. But what I found that I did is I started raking lawns until like late, like every single day. And I was making literally hundreds of dollars. And you only need like $1 to like buy some like little treats or whatever. So I don't think it was really about the money. Even as a kid, I think I always had some kind of a drive inside, like that entrepreneurial drive. And I didn't care about the money. I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to, I guess, a man's purpose is his work. So I was learning that when I was super young. So I started making all this money. I took that in. I remember another time I was laying sod. Like, it's a boring story, but just to give you a bit of the background of the drive, laying sod at one of my mom's friends' houses. It was this massive, if you don't know what sod is, it's like fake grass, big rolls. You just roll it up. You just make a new lawn. There was 2 or 3 full-grown men. I was like 9 years old, and I wasn't getting paid for this. And they did like maybe a 10th of the lawn. And for whatever reason, I just laid 3/4 of the lawn, all the sod. It took like 2-3 days. And I was like sweating the entire time, not making any money. And I'm just like, now that I'm telling the story, I've never really told this story. It's not really that exciting. But looking back on it, even back then, there was some kind of a drive there for some specific reason. Maybe there was a hole to fill. I had a single mom. Maybe I was trying to fill a hole. But that ended up transferring right into my work. So doing the same thing, I saw the same pattern going through, again, without boring you too much, going through every single job that I've ever had. I just moved up very, very quickly. And I don't think it was really about the money. I think I wanted to be respected. I think I wanted to just have a purpose. I wanted to do a really good job. And I carried that all the way through before I was a professional investor, before I was an entrepreneur. I carried that all the way through my normal jobs, all the way up until I got into the real estate space. So to answer the question, pretty humble beginnings, very simple lifestyle growing up. Eventually what ended up happening to me, again, going a little bit more into the personal side, is I ended up getting onto a program. I think I had a lot of unchanneled energy. So I got into a program as a kid. It was called SIL. It's Student Independent Living. And it's a program. It's for kids that are trying to go to school and they don't have parents around. Me and my mom had a falling out, so I ended up on my own. It was like a social program. So student independent living. I ended up basically having the luxury of having my own house or my own rental property that I was renting when I was like 14, 15 years old. So what ended up happening is, all the kind of like questionable kids at school all started hanging out at my house because I was the only one at that age that had my own place.
Right.
So same old thing. Started hanging out with some kind of questionable people, the questionable crowd. And then the same concept that I just mentioned with the work, I also started doing that, but maybe not in really the best direction with not the best crowd. And then I started going a little bit off path, if that makes sense, which is natural. The story writes itself. Like a young kid, like split up family or whatever. It's not the end of the world at all. So I ended up going down the sort of like the bad path. I ended up learning some really valuable lessons in that whole process because I ended up getting spanked a bit. Like I got in some trouble when I was growing up, when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, got myself into some trouble. But I feel that going through some of those experiences, as now that I'm a professional investor and entrepreneur, you have a lot more of a bit of an edge on a lot of the other people because you see the world as a whole. You're not only just seeing through one side and one lens, you see the good and then you also see the bad. So I think that's what allowed me to, when I eventually, we'll probably touch on the story later, eventually when I got more into entrepreneurship and real estate investing in business, why I did the exact same thing. And I made it my mission to just climb up as fast as I can, as far as I can. I spent a lot of money on training and I just had somewhere positive to put all that energy. There's somewhere positive to channel the energy. So there was a lot of lessons learned from when I was a kid up until this point, but now I'm a very successful entrepreneur, a very successful investor. I think it was because, again, without boring too much with the stories, but there was a lot of lessons learned from then until now. And I find that people that have a little bit of a colorful upbringing or a little bit of a colorful past, I'm finding now that they oftentimes make the best entrepreneurs because they're not really naive to a lot of the world that a lot of the other people don't really see. So a little bit of just a summary of from then till now. That's kind of how I got into investing to some extent. And that's why I'm like running so fast with the business side of things now, because now instead of being a kid that's like laying as many sods as I can, now I'm like laying the sod now is like raising money and buying another building and high level networking and learning how to negotiate and learning high level selling and all that. So it's the same concept. Like I'm a kid now trying to reach my potential. I'm laying the sod, but now I'm doing it in more of like business aspect. And now there's really no ceiling on the business. So I'm looking forward, 31 years old now, and I'm looking forward to what I'm going to accomplish between now and, when I'm 60, because now I'm still the same kid. I'm just eating the game, but now it's like business game instead of like kid game. Definitely.
All right. So yeah, I definitely understand how now that's helped to blaze your path because you had so much adversity, which built character. And now you learned a formula that allowed you to be able to now transition this into business rather than just working for someone else. My question is, out of all of the things that you've learned, what got you into real estate? How did that become the thing for you?
Yeah, so the transition into real estate. So I eventually got into the mining industry. So I was doing that for 7 or 8 years. Same thing, climb the ladder super fast. You be kind of the short version. But what ended up happening is it was so dependent on the price of copper, the position that I was in the mining industry. So I was really scared that the price of that commodity would drop so low to the point that the mines would shut down. And I didn't really have any formal education at that time. So I really had nothing to fall back on. So what I ended up doing is I pivoted in. I transitioned into the trades. The mine offered me an apprenticeship to go through trade school to become a millwright. It's like an industrial mechanic. So what I ended up doing is I moved to Vancouver, Canada to go to trade school. And it was the day before the first day of trade school started. There was a free real estate seminar right up the street from my campus. It was a RAIN seminar. They're the Real Estate Investment Network. Mm-hmm. So it was by fluke, or it was sort of just by chance that I saw this free seminar. Brand new to the city, big city. It was 1 million people or so, more than 1 million. Came from a smaller community before that. Had no friends there, didn't know any contacts. So I just wandered into this real estate seminar. It was completely free. And it was a bit of a sales pitch. I remember the guy, he had a ton of charisma. His name's Richard Dolan. I believe he was the president or the vice president of RAIN at the time. And he ran me through 2 or 3 hours of a pitch, telling me about cash flow, passive income, how to build wealth, all these different things, financial freedom. And within 2 or 3 hours of sitting in the seminar, I was already pretty much addicted to the idea of getting into the real estate space. So I saw that as a huge sort of uncharted, untapped resource that I could explore. And at that time, I thought that I was going to go into trades and I was going to be working in the mining industry or the millwrighting industry for my whole career. And now I have a huge eye-opening experience. And I thought, okay, I can make way more money and I can have so much more freedom. And there's so much further that I can go if I go explore a little bit deeper into the real estate space. So that was my very first interaction in real estate. I ended up hiring a whole bunch of coaches. I experimented with a few different coaching companies until I finally found Stefan Arnio online. And that was the one that eventually ended up sticking. But that's how I initially got interested. It was a free seminar right up the street from my campus in a brand new city that I moved to for trade school.
Wow. So you go to this seminar and he pitches you. Do you then come home? Did you have a roommate? Was there anybody who you talked to? Because we all get the real estate bug some way. But I think where a lot of people don't get started is because of the fact that they feel like they don't have a network or they don't have anyone else that's getting started with them. So it's a big daunting thing. For you, was it somebody else who was already doing what you were doing? Did you have a couple people or did you go on the path by yourself?
I went on the path completely by myself. So what I ended up eventually doing is I started checking out a bunch of other courses, like seminars that were weekend seminars. We've all seen a million of those. They're a couple $1,000, a lot of them, just by myself. So I slowly started networking and filling my network with other investors, or at least other aspiring investors. But I was solo. Didn't know anybody investing. Didn't know anybody that was in the real estate space at all. And then when I went to my first large seminar, I ended up signing up for a large coaching program. I met another guy that was in the seminar with me. It was the very first time that we'd ever met. And me and him ended up signing up for one of the real estate programs together. I think it was about 30 grand or so. Like, it was a fairly large program. So me and him, we split the cost. We just shook hands in line as friends. And then we ended up becoming friends for a period of time. We were business partners for a short period of time. So he was the first one that I met that was interested in the same kind of avenue that I was interested in. But other than that, I didn't know anybody else that was investing in real estate. So it was completely solo dolo. I was even flying around the country going to some of these things just alone. I knew somehow, some way I was going to find something in there that was going to help me to reach my potential. Didn't really know what it was, but I just started jumping on planes and just, taking the education fairly seriously. And this is all when I was still going through trade school also. So I was still mining at this time.
Wow.
That's how I was filling my time off. Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember your first deal that you ever did in real estate?
I do. Yeah. So
walk me through what that deal was.
So it was shortly after, and it was a property that I purchased. It was in BC. It was a little bit outside of Vancouver. It was a condo, and it was a property that I ended up flipping. So it was a very basic flip. Didn't have to put a whole lot of money into it. Like, it was already in somewhat good shape. I got a really good deal on it. And that very first deal, I did quite well on it. So that was like my proof of concept. That's how I really knew that real estate was what I wanted to do. I think I remember exactly what I made. I ended up netting $68,000 on this first real estate deal that I ever did. And when I was working in mining, I was making pretty good money. But to net that was like a whole year's worth of salary when I was in the mining industry. And that's like long hours, brutal work. Like, it's dangerous. Like, you're getting beat up, you're doing shift work, and a full year's salary on my very first real estate transaction. That was what really proved the concept for me. So it was a very basic flip. Yeah.
Wow. Talk to me. Do you remember how you found it? And also, how did you work the numbers? How did you get through it? Like, was there a coach or a mentor that told you how to find the deal and then walked you through it? Or how did that all come about?
Yeah, so that one I found on the MLS. I got a pretty good deal on it. It was a distressed seller, like your just typical flip. Distressed seller. Numbers, I only ended up putting less than 20 grand into that property. Like, I didn't really put that much money in. I held it for a little while first as well. So I was debating moving into it for a while. I ended up moving into it for a little while. So I did hold it for a period of time. And then when I ended up eventually wanting to get out of it, I think I sold the thing in like a week or something. Like, it sold very, very fast.
Yeah.
So I lived in it for a short period of time. I said, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of this thing. I put a little bit of renovations into it, just following like the same concept as just doing a normal flip. Put like 15, 20 grand into it. Did some flooring, did some paint, did a couple little things. And that week, then I ended up net cashing in. I made about 68 grand on that building.
Wow. That's great. So has that been your best deal?
From a profit standpoint, I would say that's been my best deal as far as net profit. The ones that I'm doing now, because I ended up moving out of that area. So the properties that I'm doing now are at a much lower price point. I'm selling properties now for anywhere between 200 grand all the way up to about 450, 500 grand. I'm netting the system that I use. I target to net 10% of the sale price in profit. So if I'm selling something for 300 grand, I'm making like 30 grand now. So I'm just at a lower price point now, but I'm doing pretty much the same thing, just at a large scale. I have, what do I have? I have 9 houses on the go right now. I have 2 more that I'm closing on this month. And then now I'm starting to incorporate in some multifamily buy and hold. I'm getting a little more into the buy and hold now that I have a fairly scalable flipping business.
Got it. Do you recommend for new investors that are getting started, do you recommend that they get into flipping right away? Because obviously the buzzword over the last couple of years has been wholesaling, right? And flipping's the next level after you've wholesaled a couple of them, you flip it yourself.
Yeah.
Would that be what you recommend, or where would you tell a newbie to get started now?
What I like to recommend is I think flipping is a really great place to start. It's a little bit more advanced, of course, than wholesaling. You need more skills when you're going to flip a property. Now you need to raise money. You're probably managing some people or contractors. You're doing design. There's quite a lot of moving parts with flipping. I always recommend if people start first with flipping, it's going to make everything else much easier down the road, especially if they're looking to build wealth and they want to jump into the buy and hold. And then what a lot of our students will do is they'll try to target a flip first. And let's just say they don't have the capital raised in time. Then they can just reverse engineer it and just wholesale it. But I always recommend to try to flip first, even though wholesaling is still a really great place to start. But me personally, I started flipping right away. So I've never done a whole lot of wholesaling. I love buying deals from wholesalers. It's one of my favorite ways to buy houses. But I would recommend to flip first, just as long as you have a good system and you have a support system. Flipping is certainly a really good place to start. And you make more money. You're probably going to make 10 times the amount of money on a deal. It's more work, of course, but you make more money.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree there. Just like you, I have a license, but it makes it a little bit tougher because there's that gray area and a lot of brokers. Like where I am, you don't have to have a broker's license, nor do I have my own brokerage. But for a lot of brokers, they don't want to take on the liability of wholesaling. So for me, I always flip. But one thing that I've noticed that you've said a couple of times, and I think I even seen it on some of your videos, is you've been a master when it comes to building relationships and being able to get funding and capital. For a lot of people, I think that's why they don't get started, because they struggle with the capital part. And they say, man, I don't have very good credit. I do have some resources, but I don't even know how to put them together. How do you how did you get started with building the relationships, and what was that clicking piece that allowed you to really scale up?
Yeah. Certainly. So like you mentioned, that's one of the most important parts as being a real estate investor, is learning how to get access to capital. The way that I got started, it was in one of Stefan's programs, one of our Black Card University programs. You get something, it's called the 100K Challenge Capital Raising Program. And it's standard issue. It comes with all of our coaching programs. And that's exactly what I used to learn how to raise money for even on my very first deal, I raised all the money for that. So essentially in the program, you put some infrastructure together, like you put some material together. We put together a capital raising binder. We put together something we call a Capital 150 list. And a lot of the time when people have that program, they're also in one of our coaching programs. So one of the strategies there is you're able to leverage a really solid, proven system when you're sitting across from a potential investor, which is really important, especially if somebody's brand new and they don't have a lot of skills yet. They don't really have a lot of track record yet. Being able to leverage somebody else that's doing this very successfully with a very proven system, it's really going to give you a huge advantage if you're actually presenting to somebody. So it's, I guess the short answer is I had a really good system that I used to walk me through. It showed you how to present the idea to somebody. It also showed you a whole bunch of quote unquote rebuttals. All the potential investors are always going to ask you a series of pretty much the same questions every single time. So being able to study some material and get really well prepared before you actually sit in real life with somebody is important. So that's what I did. I had a good system that was included with one of my coaching programs that I was in. And that's, to this day, that's exactly how I've raised all my money up until today. I have tons of capital out right now, and it's through the same kind of programs.
For somebody though that maybe doesn't have the money to get started, investing into a coaching program, because everybody's at a different level. What's up, Dream Builder? I hope that you're getting a lot of value from this episode. Note takers are money makers. So I hope that you're taking lots of notes, and I hope that you'll implement something that will help to change your real estate career. If you want even more access, even more resources, and you want a community to help keep you accountable, well, I want to invite you to head on over to DreamNationAcademy.com. Again, that's DreamNationAcademy.com. That's where I hang out as well as the team, and we host so many resources to help you along your real estate journey. So again, that's DreamNationAcademy.com. Let's go ahead and hop back on into it. And for somebody that says, man, I would love that, but to be honest with you, I don't have that money. Is there one trick or one thing that can even give them a taste of how they can start to generate, maybe not 100 grand in capital or 150K, but maybe they can generate at least a partnership with someone and then be able to get a little bit of capital to invest into a system? What would you say to that person?
So I guess there's a few ways that you can do it. I think relationships are pretty critical when it comes to that. If it's raising capital, it's a little bit, I guess there's two ways that somebody can do it. It can be a little bit risky if you don't have a system. And let's just say, for an example, somebody has a few people that could be potential investors at some point. They might have a little bit of capital. They say, okay, maybe I could present something to those people without having the system first. What can sometimes happen is you can sort of burn your hottest prospects for capital, because if they're going to ask you like a very basic question, if you don't have an answer, you might turn them off right away. And it might be really hard to recover from that. So my biggest piece of advice, if somebody didn't have access to any capital or any credit, would be to try to find a strong relationship with somebody that does have access to either some capital or some credit, and just present an idea to them about what type of a system they think would be the best to be able to get into the space to start doing some deals. That's usually going to come in the form of some kind of a training program. Without having any skills, in my opinion, it's very difficult to raise capital, even if you sit across from somebody and you're like a good salesman, but you don't really know about investing yet. And you would convince them to let's say lend you 100 grand on a deal, but you don't have any education. You're probably just going to like mess that deal up somehow, and you're probably going to lose money for the investor. So it's really difficult to just do this without the training. So that would be my main thing. If you don't have access to any credit, using credit, in my opinion, is a really good way to get the education. A lot of people don't have money to start, but they might be able to go and get like credit card or like a line of credit and use that to get a little bit of training. And that kind of opens up a lot of doors. But it can be pretty risky if you don't have any money for training to try to get into the real estate space, because there's quite a few moving parts. You don't want to lose an investor's money.
Got it. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think for a lot of people, if you're just upfront and you're honest, that's what I found in real estate. A lot of the times people have the money to invest and they understand that not everybody is an expert. But I think where people get in trouble at is they want to try to be greedy, as in if you don't have the capital, if you don't have the credit, and maybe all you have is a contractor, right? But if you bring all of those people together, maybe you don't get 50%. Maybe you don't get 75%. Maybe on this first deal, you only get 15%. But at the same time, you got so much more of the knowledge, the information, and you didn't have to have as much risk. You virtually didn't have any risk if you brought in those people. And so that's the big thing. I think that you're 100% is starting out with credit if you have at least access to credit. But if you don't have that, I think if you're just upfront and honest with people, that can be the way that you get into a deal. And maybe it's only 10%, but 10% is better than zero.
Definitely. Yeah. And even if you only had a 10% stake in a deal, you're documenting your progress, like you're documenting everything that you're doing. So it makes the money much easier to raise down the road. My main challenge right now, and I think a lot of investors that have been in the game for a couple of years have the same problem, is like I have access to so much capital right now. What I'm deficient on is deals to place the money. So you're always deficient in something. When you're just starting, you're exactly right. Even if you have a small stake in something, just document the journey through, and document the pictures, shoot some videos. You can make quite a few videos when you're just doing one project, even if it's your first one. And then that's going to give you a lot more of a track record for the second time you sit across from somebody. And then maybe the second time you're taking a little bit more of a piece of the next deal. because you're a little more proven at that point. So the first one is always tough, like proving the concept, especially with no experience. It's certainly challenging. It can be done, but it's certainly good to really document everything that you're doing as you're going through.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. For you, can you look back on one deal that you've had and tell us about maybe a mistake that you made that you learned tremendously from, and now that helped to obviously shaping up your career of where it is today?
Definitely. One of them that comes to mind is I have so many houses on the go. So I work with so many different crews of contractors. I have seven crews on a rotation right now. One thing that I did in the past, and it actually wasn't all that long ago, I don't know if it was complacency, but I ended up overpaying the contractor by probably 10, almost $12,000, close to 15 grand. I overpaid the guy. And the reason that I did it is it was a brand new contractor, never worked with them before. He quoted me 4 weeks for the job, and that normally would have been an 8-week job, like a 6 to 8 week job. So he said he was going to slap a whole bunch of bodies and get it done super fast. So I screened him fairly well. He checked out. He seemed to check out, checked his references, walked through a bunch of his jobs, blah, blah, blah. And then what I ended up doing is I gave him 3 draws. They were about $8,500 a piece. So I gave him 25 grand. And then
Up front?
his work. Sorry?
Up front? You gave him the 3 draws up front or along the way?
Along the way, as per the schedule.
Got it.
So draw 1, week 1, draw 2, week 2, draw 3, week 3. Then there was draw 4, week 4.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, as soon as the 3rd week came, this guy just pretty much disappeared. There was one guy there, but it was very, very, very slow. Mm-hmm. So it took him an additional month just to complete that 1 week of work. And I was having so many issues with him. Eventually, I ended up just firing him. But after I fired him, when I really started breaking down the numbers to see exactly what he completed compared to the amount of money that I paid him, I found that he'd only, and there's a little bit of my own negligence, I found out that he'd really only did 12 grand worth of work or so, only 12 grand worth of work. I gave him 25 grand. So that's not a huge amount of money, but keep in mind, if you're flipping property, especially at the price point, if you're only looking to make 20 grand on a little deal, 12 grand is a pretty big piece of the bottom line of the profit at the end. So that was one thing that I learned. Now, every time I'm giving payments, I'm like militant right now about what they've completed up till that point, because I've been burned on it now already once. So that would have been one lesson, is you certainly want to make sure that you're not overpaying the contractors, because you never know, especially if they're new, they might just disappear one day. And now you have to get another contractor to come in. And usually if a new guy's coming in to finish off the job, usually their estimate is going to be slightly higher than what you would have expected. Right. So next thing you know, now your profit is pretty much cooked. You could even easily lose money that way. As long as the sale goes well, I don't think I'm going to lose money. Like, my investor is certainly not going to lose money. I might make a little bit of money, but certainly not as much as I was hoping for. At the same time, it's a volume game as well. Like, I have so many houses on the go. At some point, one property might go a little bit weird, but that would have been that's a fairly recent real life example of what I did. Could have been complacency, could have been negligence, could have been I put a little bit of too much trust in a new guy that wasn't proven yet. So there was a few mistakes that kind of led up to that. That was certainly one.
So for you, are you GCing when you say my investors? Are you really GCing the projects, or are you in on the deals too, of the 50-50? Are you 100% leveraging? What does that look like for you?
So I don't GC. So what I do is, when I raise capital for a deal, for an example, I'll do the all cash model. So I'll raise money from an investor, I'll pay cash for the house, and then I'll get all the cash up front for the renos, like all the holding costs, etc. And then I hire a general contractor. So I typically only deal with one person per house that I'm flipping. So I deal with the one guy. He deals with all of his sub trades. I have only one point of communication per building, which I really like. It takes a lot of the time out. Mm-hmm. That's how I'm able to do, so many houses. But that's the structure. I usually do a preferred return with my investors. I used to do profit splitting. If anybody's listening and they're first getting in, profit splitting, like you mentioned earlier, overpaying for the capital in the beginning is certainly a good strategy to make the money easy to access. I don't do profit splitting anymore. I usually pay out preferred returns. But that's what I do. I have one guy. He handles the entire project from start to finish. I have some pretty tight agreements with the general contractor, and then he delegates things to his sub trades. I don't have to deal with the sub trades.
Got it. And now, Are you using those same do most of your investors that invest with you, are they particular in being single family or flipping because they want their return sooner? Or have you figured out a way to now be able to convert that over into multifamily? Because you said now you're trying to get into multifamily. What does that look like? Or is that a whole nother set of investors that you really have to go after? Because most of the time people don't see them both ways. And a lot of people want their short-term returns back. What's that look like for you?
Yeah. So for me right now, I'm doing some smaller multifamily buy and hold. I'm doing that with a different set of investors. The investors that I've been using for the flips, they really like the model that we're using with the flips because it's entry level homes. It's nothing fancy. It's like the same thing every time. It's like Donald's, like cheeseburgers, the same over and over and over. Price point's the same. It's literally the exact same thing every time. Same style as well, which is nice. So I'm using different investors for the multifamily buy and hold. I have one larger investor. I'm looking for some larger multifamily, like nothing big. I'm looking for something more like 20 units. What I'm doing right now is like smaller stuff, like 4 units. So I have one specific investor in mind for when I start doing the larger multifamily. So I'm looking for a few properties right now that I can do with a different investor. So I have a few different types of investors. One I'm doing the smaller multifamily with. They're holding the mortgages and they're putting up the down payments, and we're doing like a 50-50 partnership on the building. So I'm just essentially finding the building, and I own half the equity. And then the other kind that's doing the larger multifamily buy and hold. And then the normal investors I usually deal with, that we're just doing the starter home flips.
Got it. Do you try to get into most of your deals with none of your own money in? You just try to use your investors?
Definitely. Yeah. I don't use a dollar of my own money. I only use investors. Yeah.
Got it. And that's a really key strategy. The reason why I wanted to bring that up is because for a lot of people that are listening, they think, oh man, I don't have the credit. I don't have the money. I either need to be wholesaling or I'm not of value. But understanding that, just like you said, if you come in with the relationships and you can find the building and you're willing to put your time into managing at least the first couple, so you can have a proven system and that investor knows that you're solid, that's value in itself. Right. And because these investors, most of the time, they're probably pretty busy and they don't have the time. If they're running their own business or whatever, they don't have the time to be doing all of that. So this is where you can earn your keep.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's about just developing the skills, having a really good system in place to be able to manage some of the projects. And it's just a really good system overall, because if you're able to get the skills enough that you can do deals with none of your own money, that's like infinitely scalable as long as you can establish more relationships and just manage more projects. What I'm doing now is I have my twin brother just got into this space. He used to be mining as well. He's working here internally with Black Card now as like in sales. So now what he's doing is he's starting to learn a lot about the project management, not managing the renovations, but more so managing the general contractors. So he's shadowing me on a lot of my deals. So now I have some extra help with him. He can get some experience. That way I can do more and more projects. And then eventually I'll have to probably add a few more people in. And you can do quite a few things. Like one of the coaches that works with us, that coaches for Black Card, she has been with us for a few years and she's on track to do, probably 45 houses this year or so, because she has the system, she has the people, she has the manpower. And same thing, I don't think she's using any of her own money either. So it's very scalable, just as long as you just start small and start simple, and then you can work your way up over a period of time. And you don't have to use any of your own resources or your own credit. But it certainly takes a little bit of work to learn.
For sure. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times about Black Card University, and that was something that Stefan started, and you've been a big powerhouse behind it. Explain to us, what is that and how can someone benefit from it?
Definitely. So it's Black Card University. It used to be Stefan Arnio High Performance. So it's been around for 8 years or so, close 7-8 years. It's been recently rebranded as Black Card University, but it's the same company. And what it is essentially is people can come in, they can start as small as they want. So we have a whole bunch of books. Stefan wrote 8 books. They're all business books. So if people are looking for just some basic concepts, they can start with a couple bucks for a book. Then we also have some larger skills-based programs. If people want to come in and learn how to, for an example, just to raise capital, we have some courses for that. If they want to learn how to negotiate, we have some courses for that. Sales courses for that, marketing, building wealth. So there's a whole bunch of skills courses. And then we also have the full-on one-on-one high-performance coaching programs. And what that does, they essentially walk you from start to finish all the way through, either doing your first deal, doing 3 deals, 6 deals, or our top tier program, which is called Platinum. People are the objective in that program is to do 12 deals in 12 to 18 months, or roughly a deal every single month. So that one is reserved for people that are already investing. They're probably already doing a couple of deals a year, but they want to just refine the systems, get a bit of a tune up on the mindset to be able to scale up. So we have a wide range of courses for everybody. Sometimes people want to come in and learn how to do their first deal. That's going to include raising the money, so they don't have to have any capital coming in. Of course, there's costs associated with the programs, but they don't actually have to have capital for deals as long as they're getting the training. So it's wildly beneficial for somebody that's just looking for some basic concepts. They just want to say, what is real estate investing? They can read some of the business books. Or, okay, I want to brush up on one skill. Maybe they're not even a real estate investor. Maybe they're a realtor, or maybe they're a broker. They want to learn a little bit more about selling. They can just take a skills-based course. Or people like myself that want to go all the way through and they want to scale a real estate business. A lot of them will start with the active stuff like flipping, and then eventually they'll pivot into the buy and hold. We have a 5-year program with Blackcard. It's called the MI5. So it's the Millionaire in 5 Years program. So we don't want to show people how to just do their first deal. We want to walk them all the way through until they're a full-time investor, a full-time entrepreneur. And that, of course, usually takes longer than 1 year. So we have 5 years of a curriculum. So pretty much something for everybody, just depending on where people want to start.
Got it. How many people have you walked through this program in terms of how long has it been rebranded?
For coming up on 1.5 years, 1.5, 2 years or so.
Got it. How many people in the last year and a half have you guys walked through the program?
So right now we have quite a few students. We have 70-ish students right now. Most of them have joined just in the last little while. So we have students coming out all the time, students coming in. So I've probably personally helped walk through probably close to 100 students in the last 2 years. I'm the main hub for a lot of people coming into our coaching programs.
Got it. Cool. And then as far as the books and everything, are these books available to be got online as far as like Amazon? Do you have to join the coaching program to get access to this information? Or is it like, yeah, you can go to Amazon or go to our website and just purchase the books?
Yeah, so you can find most of the books on Amazon, a lot of the business books. He also has another series called Hard Times Create Strong Men, which is really good. It's more so about finding your purpose. So those are all available on Amazon. You don't have to be a student to get the books. Anybody can just grab the books. You can go blackcardu.com. There's a store there. You can also get the books on the store for not a lot of money. And it's recommended for people that are curious about the space, but they don't really know 100% if they want to go into real estate or they just want a little more information. Books are always going to be a really great place to start for them. And there's really no obligation to do anything else over and above that. What a lot of people will do is they'll start with the main 2 books people usually start with is called Money People Deal. It's all about joint venture partnerships. It's about raising money. And then Self-Made is a book about Stefan Arnio's journey when he was first getting started until he became a multi-millionaire, full-time entrepreneur, award-winning entrepreneur. A lot of the lessons he learned as he was going through. Those are the 2 that people normally start with. So if people are interested in the space, that's probably what I would recommend. You can get them for a few bucks on Amazon, or people can get them through our site. But those are certainly good places to start.
Got it. Where do you turn for your inspiration outside of Stefan and what you guys have already built? Is there somebody or a book or anything that you normally turn to for your inspiration?
There is. Yeah. So I've done some very, very heavy duty coaching over the last couple of years. So I still have a few coaches that I work with. I was working with Stefan all the way up until he passed away. I was just finishing up the Platinum Plus. I also have a pretty high level life coach. And then I also work with a fairly high level business consultant as well. So I have inspiration from a few other sources. I still have a few coaches on the go right now. I do lots of books, of course, lots of stuff online. Like I'm mind feeding constantly, but my life coach and my business coach, they are pretty big sources of inspiration for me at the moment.
So many people, they struggle with getting a big coach or a big mastermind. What told you early on that you needed to have a coach, and what keeps you having a coach? Because it's easy to say, okay, I've already made it, right? And I don't necessarily need to keep investing now. Where does that, mindset come from you?
When I was first looking into the space, I knew for sure that I needed some help to actually get in. because I was just mining. So I knew then it was a pretty easy option. I just signed up for a coaching program because it was just obvious. Like it's very difficult to do this alone. So I did that. I eventually went through a few coaches until I found one that was really good. And it was pretty nerve wracking to say the least, because it's quite a lot of money. Like I spent over $50,000 on coaches. That was before I ever even proved the concept. But when I did my first deal, I ended up netting 68,000. That, like, it all made sense then. Like I wasn't sure up until that point. I said, okay, well, I hope I'm not just flushing all this money away. And then boom, I had a really solid return on the investment. So I just ran with that. I said, okay, I spent so much on myself. I made so much money. Then I went back again and went into more education and more training and got more skills. And then I spent more money, and then I started making more money. So I just started seeing a pattern. There's a direct correlation between the amount of money that I'm spending on myself and the amount of money that I'm making. Like I'm making a really nice income because I've spent a lot of money developing the skills. And then I was also surrounding myself with guys like Stefan Arnio. And if you look at him, he spent almost 400 grand on himself just in like probably the last 10 years or so. So he was always just spending heavy on education and coaching. And that's why he was making millions of dollars, because he was just putting in more. So I was around people that were leveling up all the time. I was around people that were spending a just ridiculous amount of money on their education, like not conventional, like just completely separate. And I just started following the same pattern. So I'm continuing to follow the pattern. I'm just finding every time I put more in, I'm taking more out. So as soon as actually my life coach, I had a call with her this morning. I just did my last session with her. So I had a full year of coaching with her. And I'm probably like before the next week, I'm just going to go back into another year with her, just because I'm seeing so much benefit to having these people near me. So I just saw the pattern.
Got it. And that's cool. That's really cool to hear, but it's very valuable for people to know. The more that you invest into yourself, you're going to see it at the end of the day, because no one is going to get to the success level that they want to without investing either their time or their money. That's what it is. Yeah. And you have to keep working on yourself. And a lot of the times, there's one of the sayings that was said to me, but if there's no transaction, most of the time, there won't be a transformation. And so if you want to get anything that you've never gotten, you got to do something that you've never done. And so that comes with being uncomfortable and investing. And so I'm glad that you said that. Man, this has been a phenomenal conversation. For anyone that right now is listening to you and they're saying, man, I love what he's talking about, but they have that little voice in their head, and that little voice says that they're not strong enough, they're not smart enough, or maybe they just don't have enough resources. What's the one thing that you would say to that person to get them to just take action?
I guess my main piece of advice is, no matter what, and it's a little cliche at this point, but no matter what happens, everything that we want is on the other side of something that is uncomfortable. So a lot of the thing that I see holds people back is our own self-esteem and our own self-confidence. A lot of the time it's fear surrounding our ability to be able to actually execute on something. But the only downside with never actually attempting to do something is that, of course, there's never going to be any kind of change. So if people are wondering if they're going to be able to do it or not, and that's preventing them from doing something, like the only other alternative is just doing nothing forever. So it's might as well just give it a shot. There's really no magic bullet with that. I think that there's certainly smaller programs and smaller books and things that people can go through. It doesn't cost a lot of money to help get them out of that negative headspace. But just very basic. If that's the only thing holding somebody back, is not knowing if they're going to be able to do it, as there's small resources available to help sway you from that, as far as like courses and things.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. We're going to make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes, everything that you referenced today. But for anybody who just wants to stay connected with you, where can they find you at?
So I'm pretty active on social media. My Instagram is at Damon Woodward 3, just the number 3. YouTube, same thing, Damon Woodward. Facebook, Damon Woodward, DamonWoodward.com. So if you just Google Damon Woodward, I'm probably going to pop up on quite a few spots, but Instagram would be the best place to connect. People can certainly shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm usually pretty active on IG.
Cool. There you have it, Dream Nation. Hopefully you guys take heed to this. You build relationships, but most importantly, you take action, because otherwise that dream will only be a fantasy. We'll see you on the next one. First, I want to say thank you for allowing me to walk with you on this real estate journey. If you've gotten anything out of this episode, do me a favor and head on over to iTunes if you have access and leave me a review. My whole goal is to make sure that I'm serving you all the right way. You're my tribe. You're who I care about. You're why I do this. So if you want to give me any type of thanks, or if you want to let me know whatever your thoughts or your feelings are from this episode or any other episode that you've listened to, leave me a rating or review. And also, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and even resources when it comes to leveling up your real estate game, head on over to DreamNationAcademy.com. We have a really cool real estate section there, and it's something that I wish that I would have had when I first got started in real estate. So that's DreamNationAcademy.com. Don't wait. I'll see you on the other side.